Hello and welcome. I am Kim Keen, host of the One of a Kind You podcast. I started this podcast to share my journey of my past self, a woman who was struggling with leaving her teaching career and adjusting to stay-at-home mom life, to help other women with their motherhood journeys so they can let go, make themselves a priority without all the sacrificing. So if you're a regular listener to One of a Kind You, welcome back. I'm so excited that you are tuning in for another episode. If you are new to One of a Kind You, thank you so much for taking a stop by to check it out and see what it's all about. So this episode of One of a Kind You is brought to us by the Be Well, Be Safe, Be Happy, Eat Ice Cream podcast. And yes, I had to read it so I didn't mess it up because I always get the order of the words wrong, but more from our sponsor at the end of this episode. So if you are a regular listener, you know that I usually read my journal entries and share what I wish I had known then when I was in the thick of the struggle and what I know now as a certified life coach. But not today, ladies. We have a wonderful guest with us. Her name is Ulrika Sullivan. She is an author. She wrote the book Wisdom Beyond What You Know. I've read it. I took notes. It's amazing. So it's on Amazon. You have to get it. You're going to just love everything about it. She's also a coach. She's a podcaster. I don't know. She's just an incredible woman. So Ulrika, what did I miss?
Thank you so much, Kim, for your
You're
very,
welcome.
very sweet introduction. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, you got it right. I focus on helping others expand their connection with their true self, their intuition, and living more from the heart as opposed to the mind. And I
Yes.
think that's a big shift that I'm very passionate about. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. And I love it. And because I think so often we get stuck living in our minds in survival mode, and we sometimes have a really hard time stepping out of our brain and into our heart. And so that was what I really loved about your book, is that it gives the reader so many different ways to do that. And they're all things that feel so doable. I know I'm the self-help book junkie. If there's a self-help book, I'm reading it. And sometimes the advice that's given is either A, cliche, or B, it's like, oh, I don't really think that, like, oh, I'm just supposed to manifest it. Like, that's not how it always works. Like, there's a little bit more to things than just saying like, oh, manifest it. But you really give really tangible things that actually feel like someone who, like a busy mom or a busy woman, can actually take the time to do for herself and actually feel really good about taking the time to do them. So I love it. And you're also a mom too, so you get the mom struggle as well with trying to juggle all the things that moms do in addition to being a business owner and a podcaster.
Yes, exactly. I have three girls now. They're all teenagers. The youngest just turned 13 and 15 and almost 17. So yes, it's and I think also being a mom, it doesn't really stop anytime, right? We're always in our role as moms, but our life is evolving. Our life is going different directions, and I think that's something that we are always adding on top of everything else, right? What else do we
Yeah.
want to do with life in addition to be a mom? And I think I definitely feel that we all put ourselves last in many cases.
Yes.
At least I have done in my life in the
Yes.
past, and now when I feel I am at the top of the mountain in my own life, but still I'm a great mom still.
Yes.
So that tells me that we don't have to sacrifice anything. We don't have to put ourselves last
Yeah.
because, yeah, and we're going to get into a lot of that today.
Yeah, yeah. So I think with that evolution, though, I mean, just being a mom in general, there's so much pressure because of all the expectations that we have. And then add an evolution into the mix, and then the pressure becomes even greater because the expectations are still there for the mom role that you have, but they're also there for all the other roles too. And so I know in the thick of my struggle, and even now, sometimes the pressure feels almost too much, but especially back, in the time where I was, the journal entries that I share, the pressure is real to make sure that the house looks Pinterest worthy, to make sure the kids are dressed impeccably, to make sure they have healthy lunches, to make sure dinner is ready when husband walks through the door, homework is done, projects are done, extra school activities also thrown into the mix. And then if you add in fur kids, that just the list keeps going and going and going. So how do you feel like you are able to manage the pressure? Or do you feel like at this stage in life, the pressure isn't what it used to be?
Mm. I definitely resonate. If you take my story back a couple of years when the kids were younger, I was exactly what you just described. And I felt the pressure. I've gone through the process of shifting that into where I'm at now. My life is not less busier, but my
Mm-hmm.
perspective of that pressure and how I, if you will, are managing my own boundaries, energetic boundaries, is completely different. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the journey we're going to talk about today. And
Yeah.
definitely I have some some tips
Yes. And
on
we love tips.
yeah.
I think that can help us navigate the journey a little better. We're all for. So when, Ulrika, did you realize that something needed to change? Because we all don't just wake up one day and say like, oh, it's time to change. It usually takes a catalytic event or something for us to be like, what in the world just happened? Because we feel like we got hit by a Mack truck.
Yes. And you're absolutely right. Often life shows us kind of, okay, it's time to make that major change. And for me, it hit my career
Mm-hmm.
because I identified myself very much with my career. That was my self identity, in addition to be a mom at the time. So, and often when we need to change that major kind of shift in our life, it hits where it matters the most. And in my case, I put my career up on a pedestal, right? So, of course, it hit
Yeah.
there. And I was laid off from my job. I was made redundant or let go, and I didn't see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
And if you if you knew me back then, like my job was everything, so it hit
Yeah.
my self image and self worth, basically. So that's how it occurred for me. But I had a choice at that time, and I knew it. It was the time, and I felt it inside that either I am going to see myself as a victim, or I'm going to see this as an opportunity to um, look for the right next step. And
Mm-hmm.
I did it very much differently. And I don't know what happened in a way. It was divine. I believe it was divine timing for me to open up to being able to see and perceive life in a different way, which happened. What happened for me was that next steps that were shown to me, I was starting to listen to my the signs and synchronicities that showed up. And that was something I had never really considered before, that it actually could be another way than me trying to figure everything out, right? Plan it out and every little detail and making sure it's in order, everything. And a similar was my approach to the kids. But what this new journey led me to was to start listening to my inner knowing,
Mm-hmm.
starting to listen, like pay attention to things that just was shown to me. And yeah, so that was a different way of going about figuring out the next step, basically, because I didn't have to figure it out. And that was
Yeah.
a big relief.
Yes. And I think that's really a powerful statement that you just made. You realized you didn't have to figure it out, because I think so often we feel like we have to figure it out, because sitting with that not knowing and sitting with the uncomfortableness of that is just too much to bear. So we tend to just put our heads down and we're like, our brain is going to help us think through this, and we are going to think for this the solution, and away we go. And usually that ends up being the worse than where we were. So how did you like, what kind of was the first thing that you did to realize like, okay, I can't keep thinking about this, I just have to listen for the sign? Because I can tell you that would have not been my go-to thing. Like, I'm not gonna look for signs. Nope, I'm gonna keep on barreling through.
Yeah. And of course, the rock bottom that hit me, brought me to a halt, right? I wasn't going back to my old environment, if you will, at work. So not only that made me kind of sit still for a
Yeah.
moment, because that was also my problem or issue. I wouldn't call it a problem, because it was really the greatest gift of all, that I had an opportunity to slow down, not having to maintain my old routine, which was like so booked and business travel and kids here and there, like, but it made me sit down. And I think that's really what was allowing me to start opening up to other perceptions. But and also that in my world at the time, I didn't know myself. I didn't know who I truly was, because I had been following what I call following a template,
Mm-hmm.
which wasn't really me. I
Yeah.
know now. I
Yes. It
wasn't
was,
aligned to kind of what
it
I
was,
was here to do,
yeah, it
really.
was who you thought you had to be because of pressure, societal pressure, cultural pressure. And I think that's another big piece of the puzzle where we feel this pressure is because we're like trying to shove ourselves into this, a round peg into the square hole, being someone that we really are not, because that's what we think everyone wants us to be. So there's like just another form of pressure, a source of pressure just added into the equation.
Yes. And I would also say that what happened for me was that and it's funny, because listening to I'll give you an example what happened to me. Because when a sign is coming into us, or some like the universe wants to, hey, tap your shoulder, right?
Yes.
Look at this. I was too busy to even notice things like that, right? But now I
Right.
had slowed down. I wasn't doing going to work. I didn't know what to do next. So what happened was, I was on a Facebook page, and somebody asked a question: what is a good coaching training, or whatever it was? So some random question, right? And there was a link, and something told me, like, it was just, this curiosity that came in. Oh, I'm going to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some conversation prior to that I stayed on the thread, and there was this link, and I was like, why, I'm just going to click on that. And it was shown to me, this professional coaching training that I ultimately went on a little bit later at that time. But it, like, things like that shows up for us, that there's something that's clicking within us. And if we are too busy, too planned out, too stuck in our head, if you will, in terms of how things in our lives are going to turn out, or go next, or next step, we miss those types of opportunities. And that was a life-changing moment for me. I didn't know it at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
clearly it was, because uh, that led me to, the journey I am on now.
Yeah.
And I think that can happen for anyone, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I feel it's like we have to even just start by believing that it's possible for us, like believing that there could be signs for us and that we will see them. I think that's the first thing because sometimes we don't believe that there's something out there, help, like something bigger than us guiding us. At least that's how it was for me when I was in the throes of the journey, just starting out, because I wasn't raised to have faith, to believe in something bigger, which is kind of ironic because my grandmother is so incredibly devout, a devout Catholic. But my dad growing up swore that when he had kids, he would never take us to church because he hated being drugged to church. So we didn't talk to, in my house growing up, we didn't talk to a higher being. And it's funny because my grandmother, she's so sweet and so cute, but she every day says her morning prayers and her evening prayers every single day, doesn't miss a beat. She has her little cards and her lists and all of these things, like this very much ritualistic thing with her prayers, but I just wasn't raised to think that or believe that. And it was the opposite. I was raised like when the it hits the fan, we just put our head down and barrel through. So it was a big shift for me to even be open to the possibility that there was something out there bigger than me that would actually help guide me and show me signs when I needed them. And so I didn't really get it at first. So I was like, oh, that means I have to read the Bible and I have to start going to church. So I went and bought a Bible and I was reading my Bible and I was like, wait, this still isn't it. Like there's still something missing. And so that was really the start of the journey for me to even say like, oh my gosh, there's something like I can believe in something giving me signs. Like I can believe in something bigger than myself. I don't have to barrel through all the time.
Yes, exactly. And that is the additional, I call it almost like an additional resource or perspective that we're not tapping into, whatever we call it, like
Yeah.
whatever we call it, God, universe, spirit, source, whatever it is, but
Yeah.
it's something greater than us, so that we can take the pressure off ourselves to
Yeah.
figure it out. And because now, once we start to collaborate and notice that there is a bigger universal energy, if you will, that is supportive of us. Because that's also the thing, is that when we tap into that through our heart, through heart energy, we align with the universal energy, and it does not lead us down the wrong path, right?
Right.
Because our mind is very dualistic. It's either right or wrong, good or bad, right?
Yes.
That's often the mental domain, or our ego rather is operating in that domain. It wants us to kind of flip flop. But when we tap into our heart, listening to our intuition, it just is.
Hmm.
It's there's no duality in that energy. It's
Yeah.
love. It's like it's not it's like no two sides
Yeah.
anymore, right? And that is helping us to increase that trust that whatever we are shown or collaborating with, whatever we call it, it's for our highest good.
Hmm.
And that's that helps to kind of, okay, now I can relax. I don't have to figure out as much as before, right? I can almost sit back and relax and just kind of, okay, I'm going to go with the flow today and see what's showing up, or
Yeah.
what messages I can receive.
Yeah.
Nudges on my little shoulder here to say, okay, this is the right direction. You're
Yeah.
doing great, right? Instead
Yeah.
of this constant, like, oh, is this right or this? Is it this or that? It's like
Uh-huh.
that's what we often spend our days on, right?
Yeah.
So it's an energy shift within us.
Yeah. And it's when we can make the shift, it's such a different feeling. It's such a lighter, more energized, loving feeling rather than when we're, still in our head, quote unquote, like the headspace. It definitely is a much heavier, weighted down feeling for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's a, you know, energetically, I'm also an energy healer, so I work a lot in the realm of helping others to kind of make that energetic shift from lower energy, such as worry and all kinds of things that energetically we can feel it. We're getting pulled down, right,
Yeah.
to this lighter, more pure energy that we are made of, really.
Yeah. 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 So as you continued on your journey, Ulrika, um, when you started tapping into that heart-centered space and you started taking time and allowing the signs to come to you, I would imagine that the pressure that you were feeling started to ease.
Yes, yes. I today I feel much lighter in the sense that I have more trust in myself and who I am, because now I know who I am.
Yeah.
Before I didn't know, because there was all these I call them filters, or which often are made up on assumptions and expectations from
Hmm.
others.
Yeah.
But now I can clearly express to somebody who I am, what I do, what I love to do, and what I contribute with,
Yeah.
not only to everyone around me, but also that I'm excited about it. And that's really the key too. I didn't know in the past what I was truly excited about. Now I know. And all of that, what I've just said, is an energy shift within us and removing those filters that have held us down, basically.
Yeah. So how did you start, were you just letting the signs come in to help guide you to figure out who you were? Or was there, did you give yourself opportunities to explore that? How did you start tapping into that more authentic identity of who you are rather than staying in that false identity?
My my journey to connect body, mind, spirit really started with yoga. That was my gateway into connecting this whole, not seeing myself as separate
Hmm.
from others, or not seeing my body as something, a tool that does what I tell it to, right? But it's
Right.
actually, I am body, mind, soul together.
Yes.
So yoga really helped me start to listen to my body in a different way, because that's also how I get messages. This inner knowing, just by allowing myself to observe not only my own body, but also my own thoughts. Like, what is the conversation really that's going on here?
Yes.
So yoga was the gateway. And then, of course, going through coach training, it's a big evolution within ourselves too, to be able to serve others in that way.
Yes.
And thirdly, I was led to energy healing, which is also connecting more with that universal energy, be able to channel that. And that also contributed to my, perspective on what's possible. So all in all, it's about not seeing ourselves as an individual anymore, but that we're connected to everything.
Hmm. Yeah. It's fascinating because our journeys have so many similarities. So your career um, transition, I also had a career transition, which led me into the healing path that I had. But one of the first things that I did to start reconnecting mind, body, spirit was yoga. And so for me, that was tapping more into myself because I was so stuck in this cycle of comparison. Like, oh, she can do a better triangle pose. Oh, she can do a better this pose. Like, so that was such a huge lesson for me, that on my mat, to focus on myself, because I had never really done that before. I hadn't been encouraged to focus on myself and on what I can do and on what my body needs, and doing what is needed for me to do the pose with any modification or support or guidance or whatever. And so that was such a huge aha moment. So where our journeys flip flop a little bit is I did energy work first and then I went through the coach training. But it's always so fascinating to me to see how yoga is such a powerful practice for bringing people back to themselves and reconnecting that mind, body, soul, and energy work as well, and just the magic of coaching.
Yes, yes, and it's a beautiful, holistic uh, combination, if you will, to be able to help others at that level. Because also that the belief that everything is linking together is that we can't just help somebody in the mental domain.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to affect other aspects of life as well.
Yeah.
So to have all these components to be able to work with people, I feel it's the way to go.
Yeah, it is. It's like it's the magic recipe. So after you so like now you're really in tune with who you are as a person, what brings you joy, what you love. Do you ever feel like there are times where you shift out of that and you start succumbing to the pressure and external expectations? Um, or are you pretty good at navigating that?
I would be lying if I didn't say that I flip out of that mode of not looking at what other people do, or wanting more than and only focusing on the future, which is also very common, right? I want
Yeah.
that drive to produce, if you will.
Yes.
And the thing is that I now, with what I know about myself, I can come back to center much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the tools that I'm also now teaching others on how to do the same, or create their own tools that works for them.
Yeah.
Because before I felt like it was the environment that caused this
Yes.
stress and pressure for myself. But now I know it's really myself that puts myself in a position of pressure.
Yes.
And now I know how to release that pressure when I feel it's coming on.
Yes.
And that's what I wished for everyone, to have your own tools that works for you. And it cannot be by copying somebody else. It
Yes.
has to be an experience within yourself, what works for you. And now I'm talking to our viewers and listeners, right?
Yeah.
And that's such an important understanding, that often I meet people who want to have the answer from me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how did you do this? Can I do the same? Like,
Yes. Like, fix
the
me, please.
yeah, fix me, please. And the the truth of the matter is that it is an inner journey that can be supported and guided by someone like you, Kim, or someone like me.
Mm-hmm.
However, the experience of what is right for you uh, has to be experienced. It has to be embodied by the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to even allow ourselves to figure out what that would be, because it feels daunting. It feels uncomfortable. And also sometimes there's frustration like, oh, well, that worked for so and so, and I tried it and it didn't work for me. So that's it. It's just nothing is ever going to work. So, how do you suggest that people start with trying to decide what tool would be a good tool for them, or a strategy? So, do you just say, here are some things that you could try, just try them and see what feels right? Or do you have them maybe tap more into their intuition?
The first piece that I always work with somebody on is for them to learn more about how their energy works.
Mm-hmm.
And I start with systems like astrology, human design, gene keys, and that in itself gives somebody a chance to learn more about their energy makeup,
Yeah.
because that is something that is already there for someone to learn about themselves. That's the first step, really. And whatever resonates with somebody about in that information, I synthesize it, I combine all these systems, and I pull out what it's my own analysis, but in that process there is something that resonates with the person, and that's what is kind of the gold for that person in that moment.
Yeah.
From there, um, the next step that is so important is, do I want to a change? So
Mm-hmm.
it's comes with, and that's also what I write in my book. The first kind of shift in here is to make a commitment to yourself,
Yes.
to step out of the comfort zone of
Mm-hmm.
what always has been going on when it comes
Yes.
to habits, patterns. But often that is fueled by, there is a desire for a change, and it doesn't have to be a rock bottom that fuels that commitment.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a struggle to change. That's
Yes.
my message here, but
Yes.
it takes a commitment. And if that commitment is based on someone else's wish, or something external, it won't work, right? But it has to
Right.
come to the point that the person has to want it.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise it's not gonna it doesn't matter how many self-help books or
Yeah.
courses or training programs we go, right? If there is not a commitment from the heart, it's
Yes.
and the
Absolutely.
next step is really to slow down,
Yeah.
without slowing down, and kind of allowing this to unfold. And slowing down means different for every person, and that
Right.
is a navigation, a help with kind of navigate how would that look like, because many people come to me to say, I don't have time for myself.
Yes.
I don't see how I could because my kids, my work, da, 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 everything is like up here. But when we start to talk about it, like, what is it? What could I ask for help for? Can I? It often comes to that unknowingly or subconsciously, a person has been taking on too much that they don't have to. It's like all these self pressures
Yes.
that comes into play, and changing, helping the person to change that mindset is like, oh my gosh, you just changed my whole life just
Yes.
by this conversation.
Yeah.
So it is to helping others to see their life from a new light, and that's part of my tagline. But it truly is not much in the external that needs to change sometimes, but it's how we view it and
Yes.
how we work with energy in our own life, in our own current situation, that can flip it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
be.
I know I was one of those people who was like always felt like I didn't have time for, myself or committing to the journey. I wanted it. I wanted to change because I didn't want to keep feeling the way that I was feeling, which was pretty darn miserable. But it just felt like such a struggle for me to say to my husband, like, I need you to not go to work at 7 a.m. this morning because I need you to stay home with Casey until 10 so I can go to therapy or I can go to coaching. And there was such this immense amount of guilt around that. But once I fully embraced that I actually could have time for myself, maybe it wasn't possible for him not to stay home with Casey, but it was possible for him to give me time in the evening. So I really had to start looking creatively for ways to actually make myself a priority. But plus, two, I started to recognize that burning the candle at both ends, so to speak, wasn't working for me. It wasn't working for my children. It wasn't working for my marriage. And so it was that realization. It was like, okay, Kim, there's that saying, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And it can be so hard to do that. But once I actually started doing it, and it wasn't huge amounts of time, it was literally 5 minutes just so I could go upstairs and write a little bit in my journal or, do the gratitude practice or just meditate for 5 minutes. There were so many things that I realized, like, okay, I can do this and I don't need massive amounts of time. The other thing I had to realize is that it's okay for me to tell my toddler, you can have iPad time watching Sesame Street. Like, it doesn't make me a bad mom to put her in front of a device for a half an hour so I can have time to myself. So it was really, again, letting go of some of the expectations I had around myself and time and expectations around others, those external things, to focus on what I needed internally. Once I was willing to change the expectations that I had, that's when things really started to shift.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the I just want to add one thing too, is that once we start to change what we do on a daily basis into something that's more supportive, it's very important. And there's the reason for knowing more, increasing our self-awareness about ourselves. That I said in the beginning, it's important to know what you naturally are good at, how
Mm-hmm.
your energy, which could be like, how do you need to start your morning to feel the best the rest of your day?
Right.
It's not the same for everyone. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
same recipe, but there's something here that is unique to you, listener, viewer, that works for you. And why not finding that out so that you
Yeah.
can work with energy that makes you feel good
Yes.
and things that makes you feel good rather than struggle
Yeah.
against something that may not be natural to you.
Yeah.
So that's often what I find when people come to me that are frustrated or feel resistance for things, is that they're working against their own energy, their own natural, flow of energy. And that's, once we know what works for us, we can just expand that, right? So,
Yes.
but it's very individual. It has to come from inner knowing about that, and curiosity is super important. Like, what do you want to learn about yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And just being open to it and not
yeah.
saying, the first time, a strategy doesn't work, be like, oh, that's it, I'm doomed forever. No, give yourself permission to try something else. Um, because I think oftentimes when we get stuck in that identity of who we think we're supposed to be, it almost erases everything that we know to be true about ourselves. And we often go back to that, well, I'm supposed to, or, oh, well, I used to, or, and so it can be scary to step out of that and try new things. But that was really where the magic happened. So like I gave myself permission to do things on the weekends, like go do horseback riding lessons and be okay with, you know what? Yes, I'm not going to see my husband for a couple of hours. He has the kids, all is well. Off I go. You know, I'm not going for a year. I'm going for 2 hours. I'm entitled to 2 hours on a Saturday or Sunday to go ride a horse or to go have coffee or lunch with a friend or whatever the case may be. Um, just being open to that and allowing it in, because when we do those things for ourselves, that's what gives us the energy, the excitement, the passion, the motivation to keep going, because it creates small wins for us, and it's the small wins that lead up to the big wins.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. So, Ulrika, if someone is at the point where they are thinking like, yes, I am realizing I'm in my head and I don't really know what to do about it. Is there like something small that they can start doing today to help begin the journey? Maybe that's a huge question. Maybe that's not such a simple answer.
Yes, I mean, if you want to start something in this moment, I would stop right now and put your hands on your heart
Mm,
and just see if you can feel that your heart beating, and close your eyes and take a few breaths in and out, allowing your energy to fall to your feet, which means that you're drawing your attention to your feet. And if you're the stressed mom right now, you can do this right now, and you can bring out that tool every time you feel overwhelmed.
yeah.
Put your hands on your heart, notice your feet, take a few deep breaths, close your eyes, really feel your heart beating, because it will bring you into this present moment. If you're out here, have
Mhm.
27 things that needs to be done,
Yeah.
take
Ah,
30 seconds to bring that home.
yes, I love it. I love it. And it's funny because I do the same practice with my coaching clients, but I also use that same practice with Girl Talk, my after school program. And I teach the girls, and they're in grades first through six. I teach them how to do just that. And it's cute because I also say, breathe, focus on a color and breathe that into your heart space. And it's cute because the little girls will pick every color, like, Miss Kim, I saw the rainbow. I saw purple and pink and yellow and orange and green and blue and brown and black. And I'm like, you did. Wonderful. I love it. So colorful. But then there are some girls who are like, I didn't see any color. And I'm like, that's okay. You don't, and sometimes when I do it, I don't see a color, but it's really just about the practice of taking time to feel your heartbeat,
Yeah.
to breathe into your body, feel the weight of your feet on the ground, and really just center into that, sink into that. And so that's one of my favorites. So I love that's what you shared.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And notice how you feel before and after, because it
Yes.
is that shift we want to notice as well. Like, if we can feel ourselves feeling better, feeling more calm after 30 seconds like that, you can do it anytime. You can do it. That's just the beginning of the self awareness that you can bring out anytime when you need a shift in your life.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that practice because you're right, you can do it anywhere. There are times where I've been driving and it's not a long drive to get my children from school, but it's just enough of a drive to sometimes where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to and have some serious road rage. And I just put my hand on my heart, one hand on the steering wheel, one hand on my heart. And if I can get to a red light, then I'll put both hands on my heart. And I just do some deep breathing. And it's enough to say, okay, Kim, we're recentered. All is well. We're going to keep on driving, and we're not going to go completely off the hinges.
Yes.
So it's beautiful. You really can do it anywhere. And it's such a powerful thing because the body just needs the breath. It brings the oxygen back in, and it really does an amazing job of calming your nervous system. And it's really just incredible.
Yeah. And the second thing I would do is just decide if you really want to change, right?
Yeah.
And your body knows that, your soul knows if that's what's next for you. And if the answer is yes, if you kind of sense that, okay, it's time, right? I would find a coach that you resonate with, that you like what they say, follow them a little bit, because it's so important to have the partnership and guidance, because we can procrastinate a changing our life just because we think we're all by ourselves, or we don't know where to ask, don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a life changing change, right? That's my message as well, because it does not have to be a struggle to change. It can be joyful, it can be freeing from the start.
Yes.
So it's this perception that we have to go through a rock bottom, right?
Mhm.
And dig ourselves out of it. It doesn't have to be like that. You can expand from here,
Mhm.
where you are
Absolutely.
today, and make it with more ease and flow that you've ever had before. But
Yeah.
it's and you, Kim, also know that it's not easy to do it all by yourselves.
No.
Um,
I think you don't need to wait till you get to rock bottom. I mean, you can sense when things aren't quite right. And I think if you can figure it out now before you get to that rock bottom, that's all the better, because the journey might not be as hard or as long or as challenging, but you'll start feeling better sooner. Um, and then I was going to say something else, and now I just completely blanked. Oh, yes, not doing it alone, because I've tried that, and it's also important that you do work with someone that you resonate with, because my therapist and we did not resonate, and that was awful. I left there feeling worse than when I had started a year and a half in. But then I resonated very much with the life coach that I started working with, and the dynamic between us was vastly different, and it made the journey more enjoyable. I felt more supported. I felt like I could trust her more. I felt heard. I felt seen. I felt all of those things. So finding that person that you really resonate with. But I've also tried doing it alone, and alone is hard too, because you can't always see your own, you know what, when you're standing in it, and there's no accountability there. So I often found that I was spinning my wheels, getting nowhere fast, trying to do it myself. I was like, I can do this. I've been through therapy. I know the things. I know about the codependency and the anxiety and the childhood emotional neglect. I'll just get books from the library. I'll read them. I'll try to implement what's shared in the books. But it was really not that easy, because I couldn't get deep enough into the work to actually be able to shift out of the patterns that I was running and do it in a way that I wasn't self sabotaging. It just was much harder to do it on my own.
yeah, yeah, and again, it's important to kind of come to that inner commitment to yourself. I think that
Yeah.
it cannot be underemphasized, because yeah, and if you're listening or watching this, your soul knows if it's time. So
Yes.
honor that.
Yeah, because if you don't, it's just going to come. It's going to keep telling you, and the signs and the signals and the alarm bells are going to ring louder and louder and louder, and so you get to the point where it's like literally going to bonk you over the head. So don't resist it. When your soul is telling you it is time, it's time. Start the journey. You'll save yourself such a headache. So, Ulrika, I feel like we could chat forever and ever and ever. I love chatting with you. If anybody wants to reach out on Instagram or any of your social media platforms, to send you a DM or an email or anything like that, are you open to that?
Absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely.
I knew you
Tell,
would be.
tell me that you listen to Kim's podcast, and I will definitely respond. I get a lot of messages. I don't respond to everyone, but if you say I listen to you on Kim's podcast, I will pick your message over anyone else.
Oh, I love it. You're so sweet, Ulrika. So thank you so much for being a guest on One of a Kind You. I'm sure we'll have you on again, because I feel like there's so much more to talk about. We just scratched the surface today.
Yes, we did. And I would
Yeah.
love to come back. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kim, for the opportunity to be here with you and your audience today.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So, this episode of One of a Kind You is brought to us by the Be Well, Be Safe, Be Happy, Eat Ice Cream podcast, which is a podcast that you should listen to, really. And you're probably asking, well, why, Kim? Why is that? Because this is a podcast about setting a new standard when it comes to podcasts about health and wellness, keeping weight off permanently and transforming your life by narrowing the gap from where you are to where you want to be. This podcast is a prime example of everyday people just like you who have lost weight and kept it off, or who want to lose weight and keep it off. The show has really a little bit of everything for anyone who desires to live a happy, healthy, and fulfilled life. I've been a guest on the podcast talking with Coach Brad. I've listened to some of the episodes myself, and but that's just me. So check it out for yourself. Don't just go by my recommendation. You can see all the episodes that he has for yourself and see which ones would be best for you. You can hear the real life stories of people who have overcome their struggles and what they've done to do that. You can also take away from Coach Brad. He shares his own struggles and his own journey with those. And you can search for the Be Well, Be Safe, Be Happy podcast. Oh, sorry, Eat Ice Cream podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, to give the show a try, and be sure to push the subscribe button to add it to your regular rotation. If you mention that you heard heard about his podcast on One of a Kind You, you'll get a free PDF copy of his book, Mind Strong. And it's a book all about elevating your life to the next level. So be sure to check out the Be Well, Be Safe, Be Happy, Eat Ice Cream podcast. Thank you so much for sponsoring this episode of One of a Kind You. And if you found this episode helpful, please feel free to share it with a friend. The more the merrier. And also, if you'd be so kind to leave a review, it would be greatly appreciated. I read all the reviews myself to be sure that I continue to provide the support, the guidance, and the resources that you're looking for, because let's face it, us moms have to stick together. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I will hopefully see you next week.